Okay, everyone, it's 12:30. Good afternoon. Welcome to our virtual Tower Garden Party, a free monthly call where we get together to learn more about growing fresh organic produce using air and water cycles instead of soil. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our team. We have Flo Driscoll and Lori Knapp, Sandra Watmore, who will be our greeter today. Gwen O'Neill will be our meeting and chat facilitator, and I'm Lori Keat. I'll be your moderator. We've all been tower gardening since 2012. Our guest speaker today is Doug Barlow. Doug has been with the Juice Plus company for over 20 years. He's an urban farmer with over a dozen tower gardens in Washington state. For over the past 10 years, he's been helping homeowners to successfully grow their own food using aeroponics. If you haven't already done so, please mute your devices. If you have any questions during the presentation, I'd invite you to enter them into chat. Questions will be addressed in the order received at the end of the presentation. And now, without further ado, please welcome Doug Barlow.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in on this fine Tuesday. Well, I don't know, we have a little bit of the marine layer here in the Salish Sea, and it was actually sprinkling this morning, so I'm happy for a little bit of moisture. And just real quick, yeah, I was kind of invited to find out firsthand about the tower garden technology when Jay Martin decided, hey, you know what? This is the ultimate solution to urban farming. And that was as a result of a culinary program that they created at the Boys and Girls Club in Memphis, Tennessee. And once they got the culinary school up and running, they realized, well, where does all this produce come from that all these would-be chefs are going to be using? And so they looked at urban farming, a lot of interest, but there wasn't a simple solution. And then several years later, someone brought them the concept of the tower garden, and that was back in 2011. I was very grateful to be invited to kind of check out what Jay's new project was, and immediately came home with 2 tower gardens. And over the years, it's kind of evolved into what we call a community garden. And that would be, I have, I'll just show you real quick. I'm growing, I've got 12 towers set up on a gravity feed irrigation system. So here I've got some beans and some chard. I got an eggplant growing up there. A lot of greens here. This is my arugula tower, which, if you may or may not know, it's gone to seed, but little flowers attract birds. I've got some more lettuces and some squash. I'm growing, there's my chard tower. That tower is kind of new. It's like eggplant, peppers, basil. And then over here is just a lot more lettuce. And there's not a lot of me, so I kind of share with the community and invite people to come pick their evening salad, and then I'm overdue to pick and take a big load of food to the food bank. But the team had asked me to talk about the difference between the tower garden and what most of us have done, prior to, I don't know, let's just say 2000, and that is, grow things in your dirt garden. I don't know. I'll just, on a personal note, I live on the ocean here, and I also live in a big forest, a lot of big trees. But more importantly, I live on a very steep hillside, and there's virtually very little flat ground around. So I did build a dirt garden down at my beach, but the energy that I put into building that dirt garden was astronomical compared to the tower garden. And while the tower garden does not grow root vegetables, trees, or shrubs, I still have a dirt garden because we can grow potatoes and beets, and I think I planted some corn this year and some onions. So root vegetables still, belong in the dirt. But in terms of so much of the nutritiously dense foods that we like to eat, i.e. a salad a day, or other things, beans, tomatoes, melons, squash, strawberries, the tower garden can grow an amazing variety of food. And I want to talk about just my own experience of dirt farming versus the tower. And if you, I mean, I'll invite anyone to go Google, soil farming versus hydroponic or aeroponic farming. The tower garden is an aeroponic technology, which means hydroponic, you have food and water at the same time in the root structure, but you don't have air. And plants need 4 things, right? Sun, they need minerals. They don't need dirt, they just need minerals. Dirt happens to be a convenient container for minerals for a lot of us. They need water and air. And so the hydroponic system, it delivers food, nutrients or minerals, water, and air all at the same time inside that column, and then the sunshine is on the outside. So a very simple technology, but let's just, I'm going to real quick just go through like the major advantages of growing, especially today. You can call it a futuristic technology, but if you know anything about modern agriculture today and you care about the environment, unfortunately, modern agriculture is the worst culprit for toxicity in our environment. And what I mean by that is, most modern farms use a tremendous amount of chemical fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, and at the end of the day, all that stuff typically ends up in your groundwater, and it flows downriver. It goes into the local stream. It flows downriver. It goes into the estuaries of the world, and you wind up, and you can check it out, but most estuaries of the world are huge dead zones in terms of marine life and vegetation, because we've altered the environment of these estuaries with all these agricultural chemicals that run off. So I've become a fan. I live at the ocean, so anything that I do on my property is going to wind up in the ocean. And there already is no more, salmon don't come back as much as they want to. I mean, we all know that our existence, human existence on the planet, has been terrible for the natural environment. And so I love helping people. We all need to eat still, and we want to eat nutritiously dense food, but we don't want to compromise our environment in the process. And I love the tower garden for that. But let's talk, so that's my own little, kind of soapbox, if you will. But let's just talk about just in general, like, what do you get out of an aeroponic food production machine like the tower garden? The one thing is space. As I mentioned, I live on a hillside, and the only flat space I have is down at the beach. And that requires that any dirt that I want to have in my garden, I have to take down by hand. And it's quite a process. And, it was a good fitness program, but the convenience of having my garden like 200 feet below my kitchen, down a big hillside and a trail, not so convenient. So space is it's about 5 to 1. You want to grow 1 acre of, if you want to grow 5 acres of a typical crop, you can do it with 1 acre in terms of our technology. So huge space savings. Water is a big issue. I mean, if you live in the Western United States and anywhere, California, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Arizona, anywhere where there's a fire right now, we all know how precious water is becoming. And I can't say enough about a closed loop system where the water you use only goes to growing the food. It doesn't evaporate. It doesn't get sprayed somewhere else. You use 90% less water in using these technologies. How about weeding? How about who, as we all age, likes to stoop over and crawl around on your hands and knees, just pulling out plants that you don't want in your garden anymore, stealing nutrients, shading things. With a hydroponic closed loop system, aeroponic closed loop system, no weeding. Another big thing is herbicide and pesticide. I talk about toxicity, like modern ag is the biggest polluter on the planet, one of them. And most of your pathogens that want to eat up your vegetables or your nutritiously dense plants before you do them. Most pathogens come from dirt. So because we don't have dirt, we're just an air, water, nutrient, sunlight system. You don't have to deal with nearly the amount of bugs and fungus. You just don't need the chemical cabinet that you need with most gardens. I do have some things that like to eat my dinosaur kale, the lacinato kale, the little green worms. I want to know where they come from because I don't put them on there, but that's like the only thing that I need to worry about. And I usually go out in the evenings or early morning and I just pick little green worms off, and they need to eat too. So let's see. How about I in looking, just there's a time savings ×2. And by that, I mean, my garden kind of runs itself. It waters itself. I don't need to weed it. I just need to harvest it. So most gardeners spend a lot of time, looking after their plants, watering them, making sure they're getting nutrients. The tower garden you can eliminate that amount of time. And then the other aspect of time is that think about your little plants, your veggie starts or whatever you want to grow to eat. Think about the energy that plant has to use to take those hair-like root structures and penetrate dirt that is compacted and hard. Potting soil is light and fluffy for a reason. But when you have a dirt garden, it takes a lot of energy to create nutrient-dense soil that is good for the plant. And it takes a lot of energy for that plant to push those roots into that compacted dirt. Whereas in a tower garden, that energy isn't required. So your plants grow literally 30% faster, 30% larger, which potentially can create a 30% larger yield. So the time-saving benefit is, one, the amount of work that you need to spend farming is dramatically reduced. And then the amount of time and yield that you get from growing an aeroponic tower is dramatically increased. Let's see, and around the yields, like, NASA has actually done studies. You think some people want to go to Mars. Personally, Elon and Bezos, if you want to go to Mars and colonate Mars, have at it. But personally, I really like living on planet Earth. So when you look at aeroponic technologies, it is a huge resource management tool for growing food that we all need to live, but using a fraction of the resources that it takes for normal soil gardening. The other thing about a tower garden is you can create an entirely man-made environment. If you're an outdoor farmer growing in the dirt, I've talked about it, bugs that infect your garden, you need to use chemical warfare sometimes. Sometimes you just give up and let the bugs win. But the beautiful thing about the tower garden is that you have almost 100% control of the environment that your plant grows in. My plants are outdoors because there's nothing quite like sunlight. But here in the Pacific Northwest, come the middle of October, beginning of November, the days are just not long enough. There's not enough sunlight. And this technology allows you to easily bring it inside, whether it's in your kitchen corner, a spare closet, the basement, the garage, a spare room. All you need is like a 3x3 square foot area, and you could have put a tower garden in there with a light kit, and you can grow 24/7, 365 days a year. So that's the other thing I love about the tower technology, is that in the wintertime, when we're all going to the store and buying produce that isn't grown locally typically, I mean, California is a breadbasket of the world on some level. But if you happen to live in Canada or where I live, or if you live in the central Midwest or any cold climate, come wintertime, your produce, the footprint of your simple things like lettuce is astronomical. I mean, if you live in Minnesota, a lot of your lettuce probably comes from Mexico, and lettuce is such a simple thing to grow, but coming from Mexico, the carbon footprint is astronomical. And you can buy a tower garden, pay for it over a 12-month window, and literally within your third, fourth, okay, maybe let's just be conservative, 6 months, it's paying for itself. I mean, literally, a tower garden is like growing money. And then the final thing I'll just kind of say is, that's a time-saving event is automation. My friend used to tell me, why are you starting a farm? You'll never be able to go on holiday. Well, not, if you're just like if you have 1 or 2 towers, not a big deal. But I'll just share, like for me, this is my gravity feed tank. So all I have to do is make sure that I have water in there with my nutrient mix and make sure the pH is right. And then it flows out this little white pipe, and I've got all these little manifold stubs that go to the individual towers. And so the beautiful thing about a tower garden, if you want to get into growing food for the community, or maybe even on a commercial venture, automation of the tower system is a huge savings in terms of manual labor required to grow food. So I'm going to stop there and just kind of share, it has been a boon for me. I actually gave up on my dirt garden. It was just over time, as I got older, it just became too labor intensive. It was too far away. Bottom line, it just wasn't convenient anymore. And with this, I can just walk out of my house, harvest what I need. I just, before the call, I made I don't know if you can tell that that's green, but I harvested a handful of greens from the towers, threw some fruit in there and our Juice Plus Complete, and I have a delicious midday meal, which is not only nutritiously dense, but it'll tide me over until dinner. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for having me on. I can't say enough about the tower garden, but I'm happy to take any questions or, and the final thing I want to say is that some people will say, oh yeah, but a tower and sometimes man does good things with science, but you can't come on, I'm an organic farmer. I know how to amend my soil. It's not going to taste nearly as good as what Mother Nature does in the dirt. And I'll just close with, the Juice Plus Company we base things in science. I don't know what your stand on science is these days, depending on where you live, but science to me is still a useful tool. And we did the study. We took the best organic farming methods known in the agricultural world. It was done down at the University of Mississippi, and they compared just Joe Blow Tower Garden with the 2-part tonic versus the best organic growing methods. And at the end of the day, they analyzed the produce that they harvested for nutritional content, and it was a dead heat. The comment in the study was that it took a lot more energy to grow that nutrient-dense food in the dirt than it did with the tower garden technology. And I'll just leave it at that, letting people know that this food is as good as it gets from the tower garden, as if you were a master gardener who knew all the things you could do to create organic soil and grow the most nutrient-dense food in the dirt. So with that, I'll take questions and answer anything or tell you what I know, and I'll be happy to tell you what I don't know as well.
Thank you, Doug. That was wonderful. It was really helpful to see your towers and learn a bit about your growing environment. I can relate to the hills and the climate. At this time, I'd like to check in with Gwen to see if we have any questions.
Sure, we have a few. Lisa Marie would like to know, how have you found more success with farming with tower gardens versus traditional gardening?
So as I said, for me, I suppose if you live in, suburbia or, a normal house, you have a little plot of garden. I remember my mom we always had something. Maybe it was just a tomato plant, but I just find, I've raised 3 daughters. I run a business. I have outdoor activities, and, gardening is farming. It's a labor of love. Farmers don't do it because you can get rich. Some of them do, if you're a wheat farmer in the Palouse. But a lot of farmers, you have to deal with Mother Nature and bugs and weather and hail and drought and too much water. There's just so many factors that ruin your gardening experience. And the thing that I love about the tower garden is that you can control most of the environment that you can't control when you're in dirt. So if the food quality is the same, and at the end of the day, you're just looking for convenience, time, and resource management for the environment, mostly water. I mean, a tower garden, this is one area where science has built a better mousetrap in terms of the household consumer. Now, the thing I love about my tower garden is everything that I used to go to the organic shop and I would grow, I would buy, at least $15, $20 of organic produce a week. And so at the end of the day, I grow all that by myself. I don't have a flat spot with a lot of sunshine that's convenient. So at the end of the day, really, as in most things in life, it just comes down to convenience. And that's, I think, where the tower garden really shines, because, it's a fraction of the labor to grow the same amount of food in a tower garden as it is dirt.
Great, thank you. And Frank asked, do you make one tower garden specific to one type of plant, or do you mix and match? And I guess maybe for people who have only one or two towers, how much can you mix and match?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, so I'm still, and I will tell you, this is the second year that I've had my community garden set up. We recently purchased this property that I'm on. I didn't have the space. And in terms of like your environment, the microclimate, our main house is right next door. It's right over there. And the deck over there is 100 degrees when the sun comes out. So it was great for growing tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, but your lettuce, as you may know, does not like 100-degree intense sunshine. So what I have, and I'll share with you. So these are all beans. So here's I got purple beans and yellow beans growing. This is almost an entire bean tower, but I just find that, if you have plenty of, let's say you want to grow strawberries usually take up a lot of space. And I don't have one this year, but normally I have one tower that's completely dedicated to strawberries because it's a small plant. You don't get a big yield per plant. So you want to have a lot of plants. So I'll dedicate one complete tower to strawberries. But if you are just like, hey, I don't want to have 12, I just want to have one or two, we call it pyramid gardening. And so I can just show you, like, squash, very big leaves. It's a shading plant. It's at the very bottom of the tower. And then I have lettuces grown up above. And then you'll notice my cilantro is at the very top. So in terms of one tower and growing multiple different crops, because that's the average person, they're going to grow a couple heads of lettuce, maybe some chard and kale, maybe a squash plant, maybe a tomato plant, maybe some herbs. None of my flowering plants are out yet, but the average person does multiple crops in a given tower. And that's the beauty of the tower itself, is that the nutrient solution, a green like lettuce is called a monocot, right? It does not require pollination to grow. It just, it's a monocot. You just pick the leaves and off you go. Same with chard and kale. So those are really easy plants to grow. And there's a quick turnaround. But if you're a tomato farmer or a pepper farmer, it takes a much longer time, and it's a different nutrient solution to make things fruit than just grow. But the tower tonic is set up so that it does both. So when you look at a tower for multiple different kinds of plants in one given tower, and I use the example of cannabis. If anybody knows a cannabis grower, they probably know more about getting a plant to produce a yield than anybody else. And it's quite a science. And they mix and match, and their fertilization and their nutrient solutions are super high tech, and it's, and they manipulate the plant. But our 2-part tonic, which is very concentrated, it's about a 250 to 1. It does both. It grows monocots, non-flowering plants, and it grows flowering plants, all with the same solution. And so from that perspective, yeah, it's a no-brainer approach to gardening. You don't have to know anything about it. A 7-year-old can put it together, and a 10-year-old can, if you can read, they can read the instructions for how to keep it running.
Thank you so much, Doug. We all really, really enjoyed this today. And Laura, I'd like to turn it back to you.
Sorry, we have 6 minutes left for additional questions. I think we have additional questions.
Oh, I'm
Someone-
sorry. I misunderstood your message.
I
so-
see, I just see in the chat, someone says, can you grow garlic and onions? So again, those are kind of root vegetables. So they are not conducive to growing in a tower. The port, the port for each plant is about, maybe it's like 1.5 inches around. So root vegetables, garlic or onions or beets or carrots, that is still where you need a dirt garden. And I'm just looking at the chat specific to one type of plant. Have I found more success? I have, because of my location, and I don't know, I find that, I put them all in one place because I had a central watering system. I do have a tree canopy. In the morning, I get a lot of sun on one half, then it gets shaded, and then in the afternoon I get more sun. So while it's not ideal, it is the only place that's flat enough that I can set them all up. They'll all grow, even if I'm growing hot weather crops or cold weather crops. And I have a central watering system that will water it so I can go sailing in the summertime.
Do you have any advice for people who are using tower gardens with new school programs? Frank, you may have some more questions for him. We have a science teacher on the call, and I'm sure he would love to know if you have any experience with getting towers into math and science classrooms.
As a company, and I love that question, because I have some school teachers that just, like, my children went to a very progressive school and they did not get the teaching, the project-based learning that a tower garden brings into a classroom. And I was almost crushed. Like, they allowed us to set them up in the school, but nobody was interested, and none of the teachers put any time and energy into it. And I didn't run the school, so I was out of luck. But, school district grant programs, teachers who understand, like, and Stephen Ritz is the ultimate example of using, the opportunity to grow food in a tower garden as the ultimate teaching tool. So, in terms of how do you get there, it's always about funding, but most, and the Tower Garden website, we do have, we can help people figure out the grant program or how to get monies, or start the conversation with a school board or the school district in terms of how do you bring, a family garden, which is 3 towers, into a schoolroom. But everything from, like, hey, the teacher has one in the corner of the school, to, like, they have a community garden where, kids get to eat off of it and they learn, reading, writing, mathematics skills, all by using a tower garden as the project learning platform that it really is. And Stephen Ritz does an amazing job, but yeah, there is a lot. So if you have specific questions or comments, make sure you talk to one of these lovely ladies about where to go, or I'm happy to answer any questions that they may not be able to answer as well. But I think every school should have a tower garden plot, because it is, more and more, and I'll close with, food sovereignty. When you look at, E. coli outbreaks, and where does it come from and who's impacted, and then nobody wants to buy romaine lettuce because they're scared to death that they're going to get sick from their lettuce. Just doesn't happen if you have a tower garden. Just does not happen. There's no animal poop that's going to get on your tower unless it happens to be a bird, and birds are not necessarily a carrier for E. coli.
We have another minute. Are there any other questions?
If there are no other questions, I'd like to just let you all know that next time we're going to introduce you to Tim Blank, the person who created this wonderful tower garden for us. So
I had a question.
yeah.
Do you still need to fertilize your plants? Like,
Oh no, yeah. So let me just so In terms of food, as I mentioned, like that is one thing, like you need to put, so plants just need minerals, and Mother Nature has done a great job over this millennia, centuries and billions of years, breaking down soil and freeing up minerals in the dirt. But this is our tower tonic. You'll notice there's an A and a B, and it's a two-part concentrated system where it's 20 milliliters of A and B per gallon of water. So a very tiny amount of nutrient per gallon that goes in. And yes, you absolutely, if you just put water in, like, we all know, if you can sprout seeds by putting them on a wet paper towel, and they'll sprout and they will grow as long as the seed is providing nutrients to the plant. But if you're just watering it and you're not putting minerals into it, the plant, it doesn't yield and it doesn't produce. So you absolutely have to make sure that there is a nutrient solution, i.e. mineral salts that are dissolved in liquid that feed the plants. And that's kind of, that's where the tower garden came. It wasn't like, oh, hey, let's just find a cool way to grow plants. It was really about the nutritional content of the produce itself, nourishing human health, i.e. if you're living in a space station. So that's why NASA got involved, because, I mean, we all know there's nothing like eating fresh produce versus like, packaged foods or canned foods, or, I mean, frozen is a good option, but, fresh is best. And so, yes, it is, the nutrient solution is key. And we have a lot of people that say, oh, well, I'm going to go do my own thing. And, that's fine. But if the experts have figured out the best way to do it, I'm just going to follow what the experts do. So I have a lot of people that kind of say, oh, I do just as good with my own, mineral mix, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that's not me. I am not that person. And so if you have that knowledge, great. But as I said, the tower garden it's a no-brainer for anyone to grow food without having to be, without having to have a green thumb.
Thank you, Doug. It's 1 o'clock, and this concludes the formal meeting. I'd like to thank Doug Barlow for being with us and for sharing his expertise on growing and on the tower garden. Our product is beautifully designed, and it's a user-friendly growing machine. Please contact the person who invited you for more information. And for those of you who might have additional questions, we will remain on the line. If you need to go, we certainly understand, and we thank you all for attending today. Have a great one.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I will, it is a commercial venture for a lot of us. I mean, we're, the people that put on this program today, we educate, sell, and support people who want to grow their own food in a hydroponic, or in an aeroponic tower. And, with COVID, there's a lot of other, like if you just Google, hydroponic, aeroponic growing, there are a lot of systems out there. And the one thing that I will just say is, when I got introduced to this, before I knew that there was any other options, they referred to it as a food production machine. And I can't really say enough about the tower garden. It's built in America. It's food grade plastic. Everything about it is about, a food production machine. I see it, there's a lot of other, products out there in the market today, especially after COVID, and people got kind of freaked out about their own food source. But I'll just emphasize, it's a food production machine. It's not like, oh, cool, look, I'm growing lettuce on my countertop. Like, this thing is industrial grade, and really about growing more food than the average person can eat. But there's plenty of people that don't even have food to eat. So I love that aspect about the tower, that it is a commercial, industrial food production technology.
Doug, I have a question for you. As a parent, like I teach 6th grade, and
Okay.
We're going to do the tower gardens, project-based learning, and we were thinking of incorporating culinary skills, and then almost like a food store where the kids will kind of like sell the produce to the, the kids in the classroom or, other kids in the classroom and or, making different culinary dishes. What kinds of plants, do you think would be the best ones for that? And then what would you envision as a parent, for maybe parent help or, their involvement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, when I first got introduced to kind of like when Jay Martin said, "Hey, I want to invite, some of you people down and show you what I think I'm going to do next and get your opinion." He didn't really care about our opinion. But when we went down to the let's see, what was it called? We went down to a farm in Florida. It was a greenhouse farm, and we toured the farm, and then we got to eat the salad. Then we all made a salad from the Tower Garden. So, they said, "Hey, you can go pick lettuce, you can go pick some herbs, you can go pick, tomatoes, you can pick the cucumber." I don't know, I think there was like 10 different ingredients we put in a salad. So, while maybe that's not your main meal if you're a sixth grader, but kids that grow their own produce are much more likely to eat it. So salads are kind of that's like the no-brainer aspect. But if you want to grow we grow crookneck squash, and squashes are like a great squash is a great ingredient for a lot of different dishes. Tomatoes, if you're growing peppers and beans, you can combine, and so maybe it doesn't provide 100% of the ingredients for your given meal, but that's really a function of just like doing a little bit of homework and plotting out, hey, we want to be able to provide meals from the food that we grow. So what are some menu ideas where we know we can grow those foods in the tower? So, and when you look at kitchens, fresh herbs off the Tower Garden year round, chefs love it for that aspect. Fresh basil, rosemary, thyme, basil, stevia, all kinds of amazing herbs and spices that you grow on the tower. And then it's more of a function of like, greens are kind of straightforward for a salad, but then it's like, yeah, are you going to grow, is it warm enough to grow eggplant? Are you going to grow beans or peppers or tomatoes? It'll grow melon. You can train the vine at the base. Again, one tower, you can put, if you have the climate, you can grow melon, you can grow watermelon, all kinds of different things. Maybe that's the dessert aspect of it. But certainly, the Tower Garden came, it was a little bit backwards to what you said. Jay Martin was instrumental in helping the Boys and Girls Club in Tennessee create a culinary school. And then the culinary school led them to like, well, where's all this produce come that these people are cooking with? So then they went to the Tower Garden, versus what you're doing is, hey, I've got a Tower Garden, we're going to grow food. What are we going to create? The other thing about a Tower Garden is, in terms of culinary things, yeah, you can eat it fresh, but sometimes I grow way more than I can possibly consume for the season. So what am I doing with all those extra tomatoes? It's a lesson in canning, food preservation. Do you have electricity and space to freeze tomatoes or freeze things, or are you going to can it? So there's a lot of different aspects to that, and it really boils down to like, looking at a menu and then deciding, okay, we're going to grow this, and then how much do you need to grow so that it's like 1 or 2 towers. If you're just looking at greens for lettuce, that's a really 2 towers grow. It's hard to out eat lettuce production from a tower with a family of 4. So that is the beautiful thing, is that a tower, the production of a tower is huge. So depending on how many kids you're going to want to feed or how much you want to provide, I'm part of the commercial tower farm business as well. So I have some tools at my disposal that allow me to say, hey, if you want to produce, 1,000 heads of lettuce, how many towers do I need to do? It's kind of like you work it backwards, but yeah, if you want to talk about, hey, this is, this is our budget, this is what we'd like to produce. A lot of farming, there's growing food, and then from a business perspective, just because you're a good farmer doesn't mean you can make a living as a farmer, because in today's world, most farmers have to be businessmen too, or business women. So yeah, so it's kind of, I wish there was a simple answer to your question, but growing salads or making bean casserole or,
No, I think you, honestly, I think you gave me a great idea. You didn't say it, but by working backwards, maybe I could, establish a curriculum. But I was thinking, you just gave me an idea, but you didn't say it. It was with, and I'm going to make it with my class, a Tower Garden cookbook.
yeah, there you go. And
Yeah,
I
see,
will
because
say,
then it incorporates writing, and you were talking about project-based learning, but then what are the kids going to make and things like that. But the thing is, when you're in school, you need something to touch,
Yeah.
and we got to show our results. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It can't just be the Tower Garden growing.
Yeah.
It's got to be some other things with it. But then you just gave me the idea with that, with all the things that you were saying. But then I'm really into different cookbooks. I'm Hungarian, there's a Hungarian cookbook site, it's fantastic. But you learn from these other people who are making cookbooks, but maybe the kids could research different cookbooks and things to make. And then we grow those items in the Tower Garden, and then we make it for the culinary part. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. But you gave me a great idea for that.
and yeah, and I will,
I'm going to write it down, in fact.
yeah, please, yeah. And Stephen Ritz is an amazing resource, because that's what he does, in terms of like, okay, the tower's growing, but what else? Well, you have to monitor the pH of the water. You have to add nutrients, and they do all kinds of stuff. Like they start measuring growth rates. Maybe they have a control plant that's in the dirt in the classroom, and they're comparing the rate of the tomato that grows in the dirt or the amount of lettuce that you grow in a tower, using the aeroponic technology versus traditional dirt. So there's a lot of, and Stephen Ritz is a great resource for, whether you're like teaching, first through fifth grade or sixth through eighth grade or teenagers. Like literally they have the project-based learning curriculum set up so that it's appropriate for the age group of the children that you're working with. But like I said, I was almost brokenhearted when the school couldn't see the value of what we provided. I don't know if it was because it was a commercial venture or what, but at the end of the day, I wasn't selling kids Tower Gardens. I was just showing them how to grow food. And I love the teachers that use a Tower Garden. Really, I love what they bring to the classroom, as well as to the children's awareness of where is your food coming from and what does it take to grow food to be a healthy, contributing member of society.
It looks like Lisa Richter has a question as well. You're muted, Lisa.
Hi. I was just curious of the costs of the nutrients, the bottles, and how often you need to feed, and overall cost of that. I know soil is very expensive. My husband built me a raised bed, and just trying to fill that, and then compost and and adding nutrients to that's very expensive. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a cost comparison in terms of the nutrients and and the ongoing cost of that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And to be honest, that is probably the most, it's the most expensive ongoing cost is the nutrient solution. So these are, when people purchase a Tower Garden, like this is a gallon of A and a gallon of B, and it comes together. When people purchase a tower, I always encourage them to add an extra gallon of the nutrient solution, just because you can bundle it all together. The payment plan is like, you can buy a tower outright, but they give you interest-free financing for 12 months, and you can bundle everything in at the time. But if you're gonna grow year round, You know, so, I mean, for me, it's like I'm growing indoors from November till the beginning of April, and then from April through October, I'm outdoors. And if you have one or two if you have one tower, a gallon of the mix of the nutrient solution, I think it's a liquid, so it's expensive to ship, but it's about, I think it's like $60 for a gallon, so it's not inexpensive. But again, when you talk about amending soil and going, I mean, whether it's your composting or whatever, it's time and energy. At the end of the day, I'm like, okay, if I have to put the time and energy that I calculate into amending my soil garden compared to like the mineral solution that I can just order online and have it shipped to me, I think at the end of the day, it's a cost savings. I mean, that's the way I look at it. But I don't have an exact like, oh, hey, you know, like if you have one tower and you're growing X amount and Z, how much do you actually need?
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
But-
Lisa, I can get back to you with information on that. I've actually done a study and broken it down. So I can get
Okay.
back to you with more detail.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay,
Yeah, and let me know too, Laura.
okay. All right. Okay, guys, I think that's it for questions. Doug, thank you so much for joining us, and that'll end the call today.
Thank
Thank-
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks so
take care, everyone. Lisa, I'll be in touch with you.
Have a great summer and grow more plants.
Thanks,
Thank
Debbie.
you.
Thank you.
Namaste. Happy growing and sailing.
Thank you.
Right there with you.